Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 23rd of June 2021, and these are the stories that we will be talking about during the course of the show. We will begin, first of all, with the FATF meeting that is going on virtually as we speak in Paris. And the decision is going to come out on Friday as to whether Pakistan is going to remain in the grey list or will be moved to the white list. Now, the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says that Pakistan has fulfilled all the 27 conditions of the FATF. Therefore, there is no justification for the watchdog to keep the country in its grey list. Now, we know that Pakistan has also complied with 31 out of the 40 major conditions that had been put by the watchdog. We will be talking about what importance does this plenary meeting have as far as Pakistan's future with the FATF is concerned, and how the Afghan situation is also or could change this FATF rating for Pakistan. This is our leading segment. Then we will be talking, ladies and gentlemen, about the family members of 11 Pakistani Hindus who were killed under mysterious circumstances in India, and they held a protest against India in front of the Indian High Commission this morning at 11. Now, 37-year-old Keval Ram is the only surviving member of this family in India that had migrated to India a couple of years back. All the other members of the family have been killed under mysterious circumstances, and no justification to date has been given by the Indians as to how and under which circumstances this family died. We'll be talking about that in our second segment. Our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, is about a US Senator, Lindsey Graham, who says that Joe Biden's reluctance in engaging Pakistan is stunning as far as the different processes that concern the region are concerned. Of course, this concerns the Afghan peace process. To date, Joe Biden has to have a conversation with the Pakistani Premier Imran Khan. And of course, our Premier was also asked about this in a television interview very recently. And then finally, we'll be talking about Pakistan and Facebook that have partnered to fight COVID-19 as the world's prominent social media platform has provided marketing, partner support and ad credits for campaigns against the deadly virus and has helped the government increase its engagement rates with the public on these posts. We'll begin with the first segment that concerns the FATF and Pakistan's grey list, whether it will be coming out this Friday when the decision is taken out by this plenary body. More in the following report.
Terror financing watchdog Financial Action Task Force will be deciding Pakistan's fate at the plenary session that began on Monday. Whether Pakistan stays on the grey list is likely to be decided this week. The decision of the FATF plenary session will be known on June 25th, while Pakistan was put on the grey list by the Paris-based FATF in June 2018. According to Asia Pacific Group Review report, Pakistan is now fully compliant with the 7 recommendations and largely compliant with 24 others. The country is partially compliant with 7 recommendations and non-compliant with 2 of a total 40 recommendations. Earlier in May, reports emerged that amid Islamabad's scramble to exit from FATF's grey list, the country is set to introduce new rules relating to anti-money laundering cases and change the prosecution process to meet its remaining tough conditions. These measures would ensure a transparent, robust and efficient approach to investigating money laundering and terror financing and to the seizure, confiscation and management of criminal assets by supporting relevant agencies in cooperatively achieving this goal. Based on these measures, the FATF would conclude if Pakistan has complied with 3 outstanding benchmarks out of 27 that blocked its exit from the so-called grey list in February this year. The Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, stated that Pakistan had fulfilled all the 27 conditions of the Financial Action Task Force. Therefore, there was no justification for the global financial watchdog to keep the country in its grey list. In terms of performance, Pakistan is very optimistic that it will get good news from the FATF, despite contemplating irreversible and sustainable measures in short span of time. Pakistan is poised to face resistance from India and France. In the best global interest, FATF should be retained as technical body, as the weaponization of FATF for political ends will tarnish the credibility of anti-money laundering watchdog.
Now, despite Pakistan being compliant on 31 of the 40 recommendations of the FATF, we still have to know and ascertain whether Pakistan is going to come out of the grey list or not on Friday when the decision is announced after the plenary meeting, that is a virtual meeting this time, of the FATF members. To talk about this situation And what are the roles, what are the elements that have put Pakistan in the grey list and not other countries in the neighborhood? We've been joined by Dr. Usman Chohan. He's a political economist. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. Dr. Saab, my first question to you. I mean, I really would like to understand that Pakistan is put on the grey list, not the first time that it has been put on the grey list. Nobody talks about India. Why?
I think you're making an absolutely relevant point. If you look at the size of the black economy in India, it is so many multiples larger, and because of COVID and the mishandling that they have done there, the black economy has flourished even more because of desperation. So if, as our foreign minister said, there's no basis to put Pakistan on the grey list, there is every basis to put India on the grey list. And I think that it has a lot to do with the underlying dynamics of how the affiliate, APG, the FATF's affiliate APG, is run, and the voice that India has there, which doesn't make sense anymore, because I would like this to be a technical subject that's not impeded by any political game, brinksmanship or games.
But isn't it impeded by political brinkmanship, as you very rightly pointed out, which includes our relationship with some of the European members that are very prominent in the FATF and have voiced their opinion against Pakistan coming out of the grey list, and of course our neighbor India as well, that is on the FATF members list. Surprise, surprise. So do you feel which should be the maneuver by Pakistan in order to move forward, in order to A, solidify our relationship with the European partners that do not want Pakistan to come out of the grey list, and B, tackle the Indian issue?
I believe that the first thing we have to do is insist on a neutral assessment. This is done by peer groups, but our peers may have political misalignment with our interests. And so we should try to maintain good relations with all international capitals and point out that money laundering should not be the forum for bullying a country, for punishing a country, for economically sanctioning a country. So again, the insistence should be that we are taking strong measures, enforcement, oversight actions that reflect a seriousness about money laundering, terrorist financing, and making our economic system dynamic, open, and transparent. That's the argument, I think, above all, that these countries shouldn't be mixing any other ingredients into a technical issue.
Is FATF a pressure tactic for Pakistan?
Yes, I believe it is very much a pressure tactic, because it comes into the realm of hybrid warfare, where you have economic sanctions as an indirect tool to coerce other countries. Economies suffer deeply if they're put into excessive monitoring regimes. For us, the estimate that I've heard that I think is very pertinent and accurate is about $10 billion annually of loss for a country with an economy our size. That means that it's harder for countries to do business with us, corporations to come and invest, and our people to move funds, legitimate funds, around. And so I think that it's important for our economy to thrive in a whitelist circumstance.
When Pakistan complies with 31 of the 40 recommendations of the FATF, why is the FATF not brimming with the positivity as far as Pakistan is concerned?
One reason it doesn't brim with positivity is because its ethos and its attitude is always to find errors in societies. The question is, why is it finding so many errors in our society as opposed to others? It really should find far more errors in neighboring countries, India and Afghanistan. They have terrible money laundering regimes, if they have any at all. And so I think that finding errors is a useful aspect when you're doing oversight, but you're certainly finding a lot more errors in the wrong country. That's my argument.
All right, you spoke about Afghanistan. Now we know that the situation in Afghanistan is a bit precarious right now. We do not know what's going to happen in the coming weeks. If, God forbid, the situation becomes worse, will the onus of responsibility and the FATF again point to Pakistan?
Yes, I think you're drawing an excellent connection here between the situation that may erupt in Afghanistan and what it means for terrorist financing and money laundering. One of the things that might happen along with a refugee influx is the influx of black money. And it's very hard to monitor random movements of populations, so the onus is on us to make sure that black money doesn't come in large infusions into our society as part of a stronger regime. But of course the task is harder, because our work so far has been done with the assumption that we're looking at our domestic economy's movements largely. But when you have influxes coming cross-border in an erratic manner, then you will have erratic reasons for the FATF to strike at you that you weren't doing a good job.
All right, Dr. Saab, when we look at the previous plenary sessions of the FATF and what were the issues that were addressed by Pakistan subsequently, from in January 29, where one issue was largely addressed and 25 were incomplete, to currently in February 2021, when 24 were largely addressed, 3 were partially addressed, and there is no incomplete or no no question mark on the others. Despite the fact that Pakistan, I mean, if it would be for a layman or a neutral person, Pakistan would certainly be out of the grey list. But we still are apprehensive on what would happen on Friday. Let's look at the different scenarios. If Pakistan does not, for example, come out of the grey list, what then? What should Pakistan do?
Pakistan should continue to work on its money laundering and terrorist financing protocols, regardless of what the FATF says, because this is in our long-term interest. The FATF is a politicized body and it's pressuring us, but we have a duty to ourselves to make sure our economy is stable and dynamic and transparent. That's the first point. The second point is that the grey listing is a very easy pressure tactic. It does impede our economic dynamism and growth, and so we have to continue to find measures to keep the economy going despite the pandemic, despite international pressure, despite the risks of our neighborhood. On our eastern front, the country is India is falling apart in terms of its deaths and cases, and it's lying openly to its public, and its economy is in the doldrums. That is a big risk. Afghanistan could erupt with violence anytime at a large scale, and that would be a risk. So we have to maintain a sobriety, working on our situation, and at the same time insisting to the world capitals that we're serious about this. Now we need assistance because we don't want history to repeat itself.
When you talk of assistance, what kind of assistance are you looking at?
Well, one reason is one factor would be that they provide further technical assistance on how to improve our money laundering regimes. Another is to ease up and put us in the whitelist based on the merits of what we've done. The other thing is preparing for refugee influxes if, God forbid, things get worse. That has a monetary and economic impact as well. And the third is the fourth point I would say is that our relationship with the IMF comes into this, where the stringent austerity protocols that they've tried to put in should be eased in rather than being forced lump sum as part of an external funding facility in EFF.
All right. Now let's look at the positive picture. What if Pakistan comes out of the grey list and comes in the white list? What should Pakistan then do as measures in order to continue to remain in that white list?
I think
because of course there's going to be the pressure from Afghanistan, there's the pressure from India as well.
You're absolutely right. I think this is a very important point. If you come out of the white list, it's not a game over and we've passed. These oversight mechanisms in a society help to make sure that things remain stable and positive on an ongoing basis. And that means that on an ongoing basis, we have to make sure that banned outfits or prescribed outfits don't find room or space to start doing things that they have done in the past. So that means that it's an ongoing effort, and what I would particularly encourage, which has been very good so far, is that our institutions continue to work together on this. You've seen many stakeholders come in to help Pakistan get out of the whitelist. So if it does, they all deserve credit, but they must continue to work together to make sure things are good.
All right. Dr. Chohan, is the IMF somehow correlated indirectly or directly with Pakistan being in the grey list or white list? Will that change Pakistan's relationship with the IMF if Pakistan stays in the grey list or comes in the white list?
Oh, you raised an excellent point. The IMF has used the FATF's verdicts on Pakistan as a means of seeing whether it's complying with an overall perspective on reforming its economy. That means that the IMF confers extra legitimacy on the FATF because the FATF is a voluntary body. But when the IMF starts to put it at front and center, then it becomes far more important. And so if we get out of the whitelist, then that gives us a negotiating leverage with the IMF that, look, we understand that reforms have to take place, but they have to be at a reasonable time scale given the pandemic, given our population, and given the structure of our society. So it gives us a leverage to bring some sense of reasonability to the negotiation.
All right. Now, when it comes to Pakistan's GDP growth, and of course we've witnessed a slightly higher growth than what was expected by the State Bank and of course the world bodies as well. Despite Pakistan coming or not coming out of the grey list, do you feel we are growing at a steady pace as far as our economy is concerned? And if not, what needs to be done?
I believe that we're doing a good job, but the GDP that we just saw was reflective of exceptional circumstances earlier. So we had an unusual decline earlier, and now we have an unusual rise. What I would like to see is a steady state increase that is in excess of our population growth. Because if your economy grows at 3%, but your population grows at 3%, your net gain per capita is zero. And so we have to keep in mind that we are a growing, dynamic people. We need to give them opportunities at all levels to maximize capital and labor to build our society.
Dr. Chohan, if we go a little bit in the past, when we read what our foreign minister had to say as far as the previous government is concerned, and when he says that no previous government took steps to curb money laundering or terror financing, why was that so? I mean, didn't the previous governments understand the importance of handling issues as delicate as these two?
This is a very important question. In one sense, previous governments did take it seriously because they did put laws on the books. And these laws go as far back as the 1990s, the late 90s, things were done. The question is enforcement. And I think that the pressure in our society is so much greater now that the enforcement of it and technical amendments to those laws taking place reflect greater seriousness now. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that previous governments didn't take it seriously. But paying lip service to such an important issue is not the way to proceed. Now we're taking it in terms of enforcement and boots on the ground, getting things done, and that's different.
At the societal level, what needs to be done in order to further strengthen our economy and to prevent any such measures such as terror financing and money laundering to take place?
Now you're asking the real question, because ultimately it's on us as a society working together that money laundering, terrorist financing, and other illicit activities don't take place. Our society is very comfortable with informal systems of working, and I think informal systems are not appropriate for the 21st century. This is a data-driven world, and we have to make sure that things are done in a proper way with oversight so that we maximize the value. Informal economies don't ever go very far, and so we have to bring a formal, structured system that is devoid of too much corruption and too much hanky-panky and mismanagement so that things are put in the light for the public's value.
When you talk of formal structure, last question to you, Dr. Saab, what are the three main things that come to mind?
In terms of a formal structure, I think first of all is banking. So first of all, people need to have bank accounts. We're an unbanked society largely.
True.
The other thing is digital payments, so having things that are monitored through phones. Yes, it's adopting quickly if you look at the numbers, but we're starting from a small base, and I would like everybody to be in digital payments largely. And the third is for the banking system to recognize its responsibility to the people. Our banks are very privileged in terms of the borrowing that the government gives them at a very low risk. There's no risk from government lending to the government, and yet they pay very little to depositors, the people. So I think that spread that banks make is unfair to the people, and so if you have high interest rates, it must reflect the risk to society, otherwise you give a return to society as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usman Chohan, political economist, talking to us about Pakistan coming or not coming out of the grey list. We'll see, of course, in a couple of days. We just have till Friday, the day after tomorrow, to know and to ascertain what happens, what does not. We know there is opposition within the FATF membership, and we need to tackle this. And of course, we have a government that is all ready to tackle Pakistan's economic situation and stability, come what may. So let's hope for the best. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab.
Thank you.
Our second